Welcome to The Archive Speaks, a podcast from the Refugee Archive. In this series, we document the journeys of refugee women who lead households, rebuild communities, and carry stories that often go unheard. These oral histories reflect the personal memories and truths of those who tell them, shaped by time, trauma, and resilience. The Refugee Archive holds space for these voices, without political alignment or editorial interference. Welcome to part 2 of Noor's 4-part series. Last time, Noor took us back to Gaza before everything changed. She told us about family dinners, about her father insisting she finish school, about the way proposals and marriage carried both duty and joy. She showed us how roots, being Palestinian, a Muslim, and a woman, gave her ground to stand on. She left us at a different point in time, October 7th, 2023, a day the world came to recognize in headlines, a turning point for countless lives. What are often debates and arguments at the tip of our fingers are Noor's lived experiences. For her, it was the day she lost everything she and her family had built with their hands from the ground up. Part 2 is about memory. Noor's memory. The smell of dust, the rush of packing in minutes, the silence around her husband's death. It's about what happens when a woman who has already lived through war after war suddenly has to carry her household forward, alone.
Life before everything changed in Gaza felt ordinary, warm, and full. Our days started early. I would wake up, get ready for work, and take my son to his kindergarten while Khaled drove me to my job. I worked as an ESL teacher, teaching children, seeing them grow every single day. Weekends were for my family, visiting my parents, going on trips with my in-laws, and sometimes enjoying small dates with Khaled. There were also like little mommy and son outings, or as I call them, mommy and son dates. We would go to restaurants, we would walk along the beach, we would play, we would laugh. It would just be like both of us having some quality time together, my son and I. There were others where Khaled would take my son with him to work. He would take him to Mina, to the port. It's like a daddy-son date. Khaled and I, even like after that, we started like thinking about expanding our home, talking about moving to a bigger apartment or even considering opportunities abroad, like in Turkey. We had long conversations about how to manage our lives, how to raise a son, and how to communicate and support each other. Daily life was like literally like it was simple, but it was full of little joys. Taking out or ordering like food every other day, cooking together, sharing chores, or taking care of each other when one of us was sick. He was such a devoted husband. He was always attentive, he was supportive, he was present, and we tried to create a life that was balanced, loving, and steady. There was a little ritual that I remember that we kept at all times, literally. It's something that we had learned from my father and my mom, where my mom and my father used to help us learn how to have a connection with them. By every single day, my father, when he comes home, we would rush to him, literally rush. We would run to him, kissing his hands, his forehead, giving him hugs. It literally felt like it's something special that we had apart from every other family. That's what we learned from my father and my mother, and we kept it going in our own family. So whenever Khaled came home, my son and I would literally run to him. We would hug him tightly. My son would kiss his hands, and Khaled would light up. He would always look forward to that moment. It was a small thing, but it grounded us. It reminded us of our connection. It made our home feel warm, safe, and no matter what the day had brought. We had a very calm, loving life. We never thought it would change. Even living in Gaza, where we had already witnessed 3 wars, multiple invasions. But the morning of October 7th was a bit different.
And then came the morning that split life into a before and an after. October 7th. The world would come to recognize that date in headlines and numbers. In Gaza, it was the start of one of the deadliest escalations in decades. For Noor, it started with the sound of rockets tearing through the air. The noise, fear, and the instinct to gather her son and hold him close.
We woke up to the sounds of rockets bombing that lasted for over an hour. Something unusual. It was alarming. It was unmistakably serious. We quickly took my son. He was sleeping. He had been woken up by the sounds. We took him in our hands and we went upstairs to my in-laws' house, which felt a bit safer. I don't know, but being surrounded by family gave us some comfort, not just at this moment. During all those those past wars, whenever we were with our families, it made us feel a little bit comforted, like it's a bit warm, it's a bit secure. And for a moment, it made us feel like the fear outside faded, even though that we can sense that life, as we know, it was about to change. My son clung to me and to Khaled constantly. He didn't want to be out of our sight for even a second. Even when he needed to go to the bathroom, he would insist that either me or Khaled would go with him, even if we just stand by and watch if something had to happen. At night, we would sleep in the corridor of my in-laws' house. We stayed there for 3 whole days. We thought that it was safer there. Even every small noise made my son, made me, made every single person in our family anxious. It made us scared. And I could feel the fear deep in my chest, literally, we were all afraid, but together it made us a bit comforted, let's say. I tried my best to comfort my son as best as I could, holding him close, telling him that we were together, we will be safe, and even praying that we would be safe, and teaching him how to say that, how to pray and say and ask Allah to keep us safe all together. Even as a child, he was experiencing the terror of sounds he could not understand. It broke my heart to see him covering his ears, trembling at every distant explosion. And sometimes I would help him cover his ears while mine would be open and hearing every single bomb that's happening around us. There's nothing I could do. There's nothing else I could do to protect him. It's just my presence, me being there for him. That's it.
Displacement didn't arrive all at once. It came in warnings whispered through phones, neighbors knocking on doors, and finally, an order too urgent to ignore. Leave now. For Palestinians, this echo is heavy. In 1948, more than 700,000 people fled their homes in what became known as the Nakba, the catastrophe. That history still lives in Noor's family, passed down in stories from her grandmother. She never imagined it to repeat in their own lifetime.
In those moments, my role wasn't just as a mother. I felt like I was a shield, a source of stability in this world that had become unpredictable. On the third day, I took my son, as I said, we stayed with my in-laws for 3 whole days with the terror, with bombing sounds, with everything, but it made us feel a little bit comforted. But on the third day, I took my son and asked my husband to come with me downstairs to our house so I could give him a bath, change his clothes. And as I started bathing Naif, we suddenly heard, I cannot forget that sound. The herds, sounds of women and little children, shouting, screaming. Literally, they were screaming that their house was about to be bombed. We couldn't understand at that moment. Someone had called them, warning them that they had only 10 minutes to leave before their home would be destroyed. In that moment, and even my husband and even my kid, we wouldn't understand what's going on. We just hearing like women, children screaming and men trying to calm them down. And we're hearing them running downstairs, like on the stairs. We would hear every single sound and we wouldn't understand what's going on. We don't know. I asked my husband to rush outside, and he actually did without even hearing me. He rushed outside to understand what was happening. I quickly, without one single thought, without even taking a minute, I put some clothes on my son. I grabbed the bag that I already packed with our documents, certificates, and some clothes for both of us, and ran to the door. I literally took my son, took things, and ran to the door. I was looking around what was going on. My husband was telling me that someone called the neighbors and told them that their house is going to be bombed in 10 minutes. So I'm like, 10 minutes, what am I supposed to do in those 10 minutes? There's no place to go to. Where am I going to do? What am I going to do? I didn't know what to do. My husband guided me and his family to one of our neighbors' houses, slightly distant, but not far enough for us to feel completely safe. Those moments were really terrifying, and even if something had happened or something would happen, we wouldn't be even safe. We would be injured, even in our neighbor's house, which is a bit far, but still, we stayed there. We were trembling. We were holding onto each other. We were praying for safety for over an hour or 2 hours. Maybe it lasted like eternity. We waited in fear. We were unsure if this warning was real or was it a tactic to terrify Gazans even further. Eventually, someone came and told us nothing had happened, that the call had been false, meant only to instill fear among us. And I'm like, why? For the love of God, like, why would you do such a thing? We are already terrified in our own homes, and now we have to feel this. I'm talking about myself, like, I'm not the one who got the call. How about that family who got the call? How were they feeling? What were they feeling? There are a lot of things that I couldn't even understand or comprehend. So even at that moment when that person came to us and told us that it has been false, but we couldn't be sure. We didn't know if we could return home, that's going to be like a little bit safe, or is it like similar threats had been often resulted in actual bombings, sometimes killing or injuring people. Like, we couldn't be sure. That night, it was literally from that moment when we came back home, it was really terrifying. We could not sleep. I'm telling you, like, all night I've been just awake in the corridor of my in-laws' house, holding on to my son while he was sleeping, trying to sleep with the sounds and the bombing. But still, our neighbor's house they didn't, like, the attack or the call was literally false at that night. But for us, it was really terrifying. I didn't know what to do at that moment. Shortly after, like literally at around 5 a.m., we received a phone call that was going around to every single person living in the north, that the Israeli forces were forcing all families to evacuate immediately. Their message was clear: leave now or face destruction and death. Just imagine, at 5 a.m., children were sleeping. We're trying even to sleep. And you're forced at that moment to leave. And if you don't, you need to face the consequences. This is my house. This is my life. This is everything that I've ever built. Like, I'm supposed to leave it all for what? For what? And why? Why would I leave everything behind? My husband initially refused to leave. He said that he needed to stay. He needed to help others evacuate while also earning so he could provide for us. As you already know, that the moment that this genocide started, we lost all of our income, literally. I lost my job because education stopped. How could it continue within this fear? So I tried to insist. I tried my best to tell him, like, let's evacuate and we will be okay. Everything's going to be okay. But he was firm. He told me to go with my family to my sister's apartment in the south, along with my son, while he stayed behind to help and ensure others' safety. At that moment, it was really hard for me to say goodbye, to just, I don't know when I'm going to see you again. Are you going to come back to come? I have no idea. We didn't know what's going to happen. We didn't know if we're going to see each other after that. But we still made that choice for me to go with my son to Deir al-Balah, to my sister's apartment. And he insisted to stay behind and help others evacuate. We had only a few hours to gather our things. Just imagine, for the past, I was about 26 years old. For the past 26 years, or for the past 6 years, let's say, from the moment I got married, I built my life. I've built every single thing that I ever wanted in life, and I had it in my house. Just imagine that you have an hour or less than an hour to evacuate to the south. So what would you take in that moment? And we only had about 10 to 15 minutes because we have 2 cars to pick us up, like my husband's in another car. And I'm like, what am I supposed to take? Like, I bought every single toy that my son has ever wanted, and he kept it. He maintained like the quality of it. He had 3. I think it's a bit laughable, but it's hurting me literally, because I spent a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money into getting everything that we needed. I even bought him like what was it called? Like a pool that had to be installed inside our house. Like a big pool that is efficient for me to swim in, not just my son. So just thinking about those 15 minutes, I was looking around in my house, not knowing what to take with me. If I had the time, I would have taken every single thing in my house, from a fork to a spoon to literally every toy that my son has, every clothing that I've ever purchased. I've left them all behind. I couldn't take anything but that bag that I've already packed before. This bag has only like documents and a few clothing for the summer. We don't know when we're going back, but I felt at that moment, okay, I'm gonna go back like in a day or 2. But deep down, I was literally terrified. I was really uncertain. But every step I had to take at that moment, it was urgent. It was filled with fear. It was filled with uncertainty. And during that time, I was literally holding my son, and we were like running around the house thinking of what to take. I left, like, my refrigerator was full of food. To think about that, like, I left my refrigerator food at home. And if I had the time, I would have taken the food. I've taken olive oils. I would have taken even like flour, because we needed that in the upcoming days. But it was really chaotic. Families were running through the streets looking for cars to help them evacuate. They were unsure where to go. They didn't know. There are some people who didn't know anyone in the south. It was really like chaotic. It was unbelievable. It was really crazy. My husband coordinated with neighbors and others. He tried to help them leave safely, ensuring their path would be secure to the south. Thinking back at it, at that moment, it became terrifyingly clear things were different. It's not like previous warning, not temporary escalations. It was really a full-scale forced displacement, and we had no choice but to obey. I've seen pictures, I've watched series about the forced evacuation of Palestinians during the 1948 in Nakba. I would have never imagined it could happen to me, to my family, to people at that time, at this time. Like, it always felt like a story from the past. It's something distant, a history lesson. It's not a lived reality. My grandmother used to tell us about it, how she was the same age as my son when her family was forced to leave their house. She spoke of fear, loss, the uncertainty of being uprooted, and yet as children we couldn't fully grasp it at that time. But now, decades later, I found myself living the same experience she had recounted so vividly. The stories that once felt like, oh my God, she might be exaggerating, but she wasn't. That right at that moment, I was like looking at everything around, and I'm like, she wasn't exaggerating. She was literally telling us the truth. She was telling us what exactly had happened to her family, to many Palestinians at that time. It was unbelievable. Really, it's a memory or a story became our present reality. Like, I understood for the first time while holding my son tightly, like holding him close. I felt the weight of what she had endured, of what Palestinians in Nakba has endured. It wasn't just a story. It was no longer a story. It's happening once again, and we are part of it. It's literally crazy. I know hearing this might feel unreal. It might feel like a story. It might feel fictional, but I'm telling you what I lived through, what my family has lived through, what my son has lived through, what Palestinians has been living, has been enduring those past 70 years or over 70 years. And to me personally, I know what you're thinking. I know that it might not be, you might not be able to comprehend it, because even me, the one who went through it, I cannot comprehend what happened to me personally, what happened to my son, what happened to my family. But still, it happened. We were forced to see, to live through all of that.
The toll of war is often counted in numbers, but behind each number is a family, a burial unseen, a woman suddenly carrying the weight of survival alone. Across Gaza and beyond, thousands of women step into this role, female heads of households, not by choice but by necessity. For Noor, that shift was instant.
Now, during the first week of displacement, our community showed incredible generosity and solidarity. People opened their homes, their closets, and their hearts to help those of us who had been forced to leave everything behind. My sister, like many women in other households, she welcomed us in, she shared everything she had. She had only a 2-bedroom apartment. We all squeezed together. Just think about it. Like about 13 people or even more sometimes we lived through in that 2-bedroom apartment in South Gaza. We went from North Gaza, from Tel El Hawa, where I used to live, to Deir el-Balah, which is in the south, where every single Palestinian got the call to leave North Gaza, which is a little bit bigger than South Gaza, and just move there and not look back, because you cannot go back at that time. Yeah, we went to my sister's house. She was in. She opened up her house for us, even though she lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. It was 2 bedrooms, one for her and her husband, and the other was for her kids, for her 2 kids. Think about it. My son and I, my parents, my 3 brothers, my other sister, and later my uncle, and even my other sister's fiance and his family joined in for a short while. We all stayed in together in a 2-bedroom apartment. Like, Just think about it. Like my family and I, my son, we took over the living room to sleep, while my sister and my sister's fiance and her in-laws used the other bedroom. My sister family used the other. So it's like literally cramped up that apartment. Eventually, we rearranged so the men could sleep in the living room, the women shared a single bedroom. But still, imagine going from having your own space, literally your own house. Even thinking about it, like for Muslim women, they wear hijabs, they wear modestly in front of other strange men, like my sister's husband, for example, or my other sister's fiance. I need to wear modestly, I need to wear my hijab on. So just think about it, like for that time, I kept my hijab on, not being able to wear freely, like whatever I wanted in my own house, as in my own house. No, that's long gone now. So we're sharing a small room. Like, just imagine, like, I have my own space, and now suddenly I'm in a small room with my son, my mother, my sister, her mother in law, all of us trying to sleep on mattresses on the floor because there were exactly our whole family on the floor. Every small privacy was gone. We had no privacy at all. We couldn't take our hijabs off unless we're going to sleep. We could close the door and we would take our hijabs off. Other than that, it was on all day, and it was summer. It was really hot. So just imagine. And that's just, we're talking about one side. We're not talking about the fear that we were living in, the tension, the bombing that we're hearing. It's made every moment heavy. But even in that tight, very crowded apartment, the generosity and the care of my family and even the community, it reminded us that we were not alone. And we tried to keep some sense of routine and normalcy for myself, for my son, for every single person living there. And even during these days, the time that I lived there, my son couldn't leave my sight. He was scared to death, literally. I couldn't let him out of my arms. As I said earlier, like even when he used the bathroom, he would ask me to accompany him. And we would sometimes quietly tiptoe together through the apartment, like to accompany him wherever he wants. And meals, bathing, like even small moments of play had to be coordinated carefully because like we need to make sure we're not taking much space. We need to help others have their own space as well, even in this crowded, let's say, apartment. My mother, my sisters, we all would help with cooking, with cleaning. We would all cook at the same time and eat together. Cleaning was really the hardest part, I'm telling you. With all these crowded like people around, it's hard to clean. Think about it, like we're talking about like genocide, and at the same time we're talking about cleaning and cooking and trying to survive. And like the resources that we had were very limited, but still we need to coordinate everything to protect everyone, and especially the children. We tried to create small moments of normalcy. We played quiet games, we shared stories, we reminded each other of the routines we once had, like meals, like brushing teeth, reading together. Like these small things or rituals helped me, and now I feel a little bit grounded, a little bit felt a bit stable. I know the world around us, it feels like really unstable, really threatening, but these small things helped us to cope, to protect our sanity. And I even remember after hearing any bombing, I know you're going to feel like whoever is talking right now, or you're going to think about me is that I'm insane. And me and my family in that moment, we felt like we really are insane, because after hearing any bombing of nearby, we would instinctively jump, cover your ears, or huddle together. And then after this bombing happened, we would laugh at each other's like reactions. It's insane, I'm telling you. Like but we're trying to cope, literally, because this laughter, it doesn't mean that the danger was gone. It was like a mix of relief and a bit of disbelief, but it helped. It helped. We needed kind of a way to release the tension, even for a moment, because these kind of small human moments became like a lifeline, reminding us that even like in the worst circumstances that we're living in, we can hold into a little bit of like a little sense of normalcy, a little bit of hope, a little bit of connection. Through it all, like I realized how much strength and patience it takes to manage a life in this situation where every day is uncertain. So it felt like a little form of resistance, a way of preserving our dignity or humanity, like holding my son, making sure he eats, making sure that he's close to me at night, a day, every single moment. And during this period, my connection with Khaled, it deepened in ways I could never have imagined. Even though that we were both in different places, we were constantly on the phone checking in with each other to make sure we and our son were safe. We talked about survival, how to protect our child, the decisions we needed to make for our family. Like, even from a distance, these conversations became our way of sharing responsibility. As I said earlier, Khaled stayed behind in North Gaza to help people evacuate and to ensure that we had a form of income, even though that it wasn't much, but to provide for us, to help us get by, because it wasn't easy. Our connection, as I said, we were constantly on the phone, just talking to each other, making sure that we're okay. And it was really devastating to know that we're both in different places, but at the same time, talking to each other helped us a little bit relax. And even when he talked to my son would always ask about him, like, where's dad? And constantly asking for him. He wants to know how he is and when he's going to see him. I received the devastating news while I was in my sister's house. And as I said, we used to call each other to make sure that we're safe. That day, he was finally supposed to come and see us. And I was really excited. I had been waiting to see him. My son had been waiting to see him. And we were really excited, filled with hope that finally we're going to be reunited. We're going to see each other. Maybe we're going to stay together. We were talking about every single thing about this. And he said that while he's going to be coming to see us, he's going to help a family evacuate to the south. And during that time, while he was helping those evacuate, the Israeli forces were attacking cars, people, vans, anyone who was literally evacuating. Just think about it. They're asking people to evacuate, but at the same time, they bomb people, they attack people while they're evacuating. And at that time, he was in the car with the people with him. He was amongst the people who were attacked. So the car was targeted, and not Khaled, not the people with him, has survived. I remember at that time, I remember my father's phone ringing. I ran to the balcony, hoping to see him arrive, but there was no sign of his car, no sign of anything. When I came back, I heard my father's voice trembling as he said, لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون, which means there's no power nor strength except through Allah. Indeed, we belong to Allah, and to Him we shall return. This phrase is commonly used or commonly said upon hearing news of death, of loss, of. At that time, my heart sank. He told me that Khaled had been killed in that attack and had been taken to Al Shifa Hospital in Noor Gaza. I remember at that time I burst into tears. It felt like my heart was being torn apart, boiling with grief. I couldn't even, when I heard my father saying that, I couldn't even understand what had happened. I had been waiting to see him that day. I hadn't seen him for a while. I had been talking with him on the phone, but still, I wanted to see him to make sure that he was okay, and he was coming to make sure that he was okay. And I remember, like, even while I was literally crying, I asked my father, please let me go to Shifa Hospital in the north. Unfortunately, at that time, people were not, how to say it, people weren't given the permission to go back to the north. I had to endure. I had to literally stay there in the south, not being able to say my goodbye to him, not being able to see him for the last time, not being able to talk to him, not being able to see him. We had some family back there who had helped with burying him into his grave, making sure everything was okay to him. I don't know, just we couldn't see him. It wasn't easy at all. And I was literally devastated at that time. Like, not being able to say your goodbye, that's like the hardest ever. And at that moment, I decided not to tell my son, my 4-year-old son, who kept asking for his father. And every time he would ask for Khaled, I would literally tear up. I would cry. I would try not to show him, but at the same time, I could not. I instructed everyone not to say a word to him. I knew I had to be strong for him, to give him a sense of safety, even when my own world had been shattered. Like, one thing that it made it like literally hard for me, as I said, is not getting to see him or say goodbye. And I remember for a long time since that day, I couldn't really believe it had happened. I kept thinking that one day there would be a knock on the door and he would be standing there saying, I'm alive, I'm not dead, I'm here for you, I'm here for our son. That thought stayed with me for days, for months. It was like a part of me was waiting for him to come back, even though I knew deep down that he wasn't coming. Days passed because life goes on, unfortunately. Life goes on, but my heart wasn't ready to go on living. It was hard, but I had to make a decision to stay strong for myself, for my family around me who was devastated as well to see or to lose a son-in-law and to see their daughter literally shattered. Her life is shattered everywhere. So I had to be strong. I had to plan for survival. I had to stay strong. Every single morning, I wake up with a heavy heart, but there was no time to stop. There was no time to grieve. Even right now, when I'm telling you, I didn't have the time to grieve. I didn't have the time to think or to even think about our memories together, look at our pictures together. I couldn't do that because I had to stay strong. And looking at any memory or thinking about any memory would literally shatter us. I had to make sure that my son is my first priority. I had to make sure that he felt safe, he was fed, he was loved. I couldn't let him see the full weight of my grief. Like, even telling him about what had happened, I told him gradually, because even a 4-year-old wouldn't be able to imagine something had happened. Even till this very day, he asks about the same thing over and over again. And I try my best to share, like, in the best way ever, that Khaled was a very brave person, a very brave dad. He had taken, like, literally no one would do what he did. No one would ever replace him. No one would ever be able to love my son as he ever did. And I had to make sure that I am right now his father and his mother at the same time. It's like I had to make choices after that, like, about where we're gonna live, if the genocide stops, if we're, as I said, allowed to go back, where am I going to live? How are we going to get food? How are we going to survive after that? Even though the genocide hasn't even stopped, but I was literally, like, thinking about every single option that I have. My family was there for me, and even, like, my in-laws were there for me as well. But still, I had to make sure that he was taken care of. I am able to survive, for me and for him, not only just for myself or for my son, not for both of us. We had to survive. I think that in those days, because I lost my income, I lost my husband, and I lost everything. That's how it felt. I relied heavily on my family, my parents, my siblings, even Khalid's family, who checked on us, like, constantly. They helped us in every way. They provided, like, both emotional and practical support. So it's thinking about how to provide stability amongst all of what's happening. It was really hard for me, but everyone around me was there for me. They helped me, along the way, and I really appreciate what they've done. And I just can't. I wasn't able to see him, say goodbye, or see his grave until this very day. No one told me or had the courage to tell me what he looked like that day, or what literally had he, like, the nothing. I knew nothing, literally, until this very day, because maybe they're trying to help me survive. And as I said, until the day that we decided to leave, I couldn't visit his grave because it was in the North Gaza and I was in the South. And until that very day, like, there was no one going back. That's why I had the image that he's not dead, that he hasn't been killed, that he's alive, that he's with me. He's gonna come back. One day I'm gonna see him knocking on the door. I'm gonna literally see him coming and tell us, like, everything's gonna be okay. I know that's a bit insane, but that's what kind of made me go on living for a while. That was literally what had happened to me and my son. And I had to confront and new reality, as they say, raising my son as a single mother. In literally the place where I was in South Gaza, where there's danger, there's instability, every decision we had to make, like what we could afford, it was everything's going to be shaped by the sudden absence of Khaled. And literally every decision is going to be based on like the need to protect my son, to protect myself and my son.
For now, Noor's story stands here, heavy with loss and survival. Part 2 carried us through the days when life in Gaza collapsed. It was the moment Noor became a head of household, carrying her son and her grief in the same arms. In Part 3, Noor will take us through another turning point, the decision to leave Gaza. She'll share what it felt like to realize she could no longer stay, the steps she took to prepare, the struggles, and everything it took for her and her family to cross Rafah to Egypt, and the heartbreaking revelation she saw when she was crossing. You've been listening to The Archive Speaks, a podcast from the Refugee Archive, a global center dedicated to preserving and amplifying the voices of displaced female head of households. If this story moved you, help us share it. Support our cause by finding us on any social media platform at The Refugee Archive. And join us, because when more of us listen, more of them speak.